Well, hello and welcome to our 71st episode of the Gutenberg Changelog. In today's episode, we will talk about Gutenberg 13.8 release, updates to the Block APIs, WordPress 6.1 planning, giving FSE a new name, and so much more. I am Birgit Pauli-Haack, curator at the Gutenberg Times and WordPress developer advocate. And today my co-host is Grzegorz Ziolkowski, JavaScript developer and WordPress core contributor. Thank you so much, Grzegorz, for subbing for Mary today. Mary sends her regards. She's really inundated with work, which is good on one point, but we miss her today. And she will be again on the next episode. So how are you, Grzegorz? Thanks for joining us.
Hello, Birgit. Hello, dear listeners. I'm great. So happy to join you again and talk about everything related to Gutenberg, which is always fun.
Yeah, and we are so glad to have you. You will we will talk about some Block APIs because there are big changes coming. Can you let us in, or should we wait till we get to the release?
Oh yeah, there is a lot of things going on. We are trying to better organize the roadmap for more technical aspects of Gutenberg. So that was one of the talking points during WordCamp Europe. Many core contributors brought that it's like the roadmap for user-facing features is pretty well defined. You have a lot of references for that. But sometimes, with so many open issues, it's really hard to find what's the most important bits on the technical level and how we can improve building blocks for core and for all extenders, how we can better integrate customizing blocks to work better with block patterns and with themes in general. So this is what we are trying to address with that, and we can cover that at the end of the show.
Yeah, and I just wanted to tease it out so people stay on beyond the Gutenberg changelog for the last plugin release. So, but before we head into that, there are a few things that happen on the team. One is the WordPress 6.1 planning is done. We have a preliminary schedule, and the post also contains a full slate of release leads. So the feature freeze and beta 1 for 6.1 is September 20th. And that brings us with Gutenberg up to the version 14.1 if the team keeps the 2-week release cycle. There's no reason why it wouldn't. And then release candidate 1 would be October 11. That's when all the field guide is going to be published and no more any string. It's also hard string freeze so that the translators are able to kind of continue the work. And then the final release is November 1st. That moved from the preliminary schedule that was published 4 weeks ago or something like that. But with the comments from that planning, it didn't have a third beta release, but that is now on the schedule, and that pushed the final release date a week into November 1st. The release squad release lead is Matt Molloweg with the release candidate coordinators again, with Hector Prieto and Jonathan De Roja, 2 veterans leading that release, coordinate the release, and then core tech co-leads. Sorry, it's Mike Schroeder, David Baumwald, and Jeff Paul. And editor tech co-leads are Michael Chaplinsky and Bernie Ryder. And then core triage co-leads is Jean-Baptiste Audras and Ahmed Cheyon. And editor triage leads are Nick Diego and Anne McCarthy. Documentation co-leads is Milana Cap and Femi Prasid, and yours truly. Again, so now I'm not a rookie anymore. So, and it's good to do 2 releases in a row because first you learn a lot, and the second one you can actually really contribute and not be a pain in the whatnot with all the questions. Marketing and communications lead is Jonathan Pantani. Test lead is Brian Alexander and Adnan Lakisik. And design lead is Rich Tabor. So this is a great squad again for the 6.1 release. That's the third release in 2022.
Yeah, I think the squad is excellent. We have a lot of people that were involved in the previous release and also in the like release from many months ago. So that's always a good mix of people.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess you did excellent in the 6.0, Birgit. So like,
Thank you.
you are too humble.
Well, we also have something new on the release lead, Femi Prasid. She's new to the release cycle, but she has been working on the Gutenberg end user documentation for about a year now and has done an excellent job keeping up with all of it. And now being on the release co-lead for documentation means the end user documentation gets a lot more weight. And she also can start earlier to triage what will be in the release and what is user facing to update the documentation. If it's not before the release, then it's very close after the release. So we give her all the support that she can get. And if you, dear listeners, are inclined to do some writing and want to do some updates on the end user documentation because you do it for your clients anyway, or you always wanted to start contributing to the documentation team, don't hesitate to come and either ping me or ping Femi or Milana that you want to contribute. And believe me, we will put you to work. So you can definitely make a great difference on the documentation team for that.
Yes, it's also the last release of the year, which means that there should be a new default theme. I don't know how it's going to be handled this year because, like with block themes, there are so many options. You can use block theme variations or style variations. Or, like there's many options like block patterns. So I have no idea how the design team is going to sort that out. I know that Rich Tabor as a team lead, that's an excellent choice. He has a lot of teams in the repository. I mean, like in the directory. So you can check them out, like look by author name and see what he's capable of. So that's going to be very interesting. And I also am really excited that the block editor triage leads are like this idea is continued. It was like a last minute addition for 6.0, and Nick Diego, he did excellent job helping core editor tech leads with like picking the right bug fixes and like improvements, enhancements and stuff like that during the whole release. So like now having him and Anne McCarthy, that should be a dream team to work with.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah, he and George Mamadashvili, who also was release lead for this latest Gutenberg plugin release, they do actually weekly triage meetings now in the core editor channel. And they started that, I think, about a month ago. And this has been quite helpful because they sometimes close issues or can push some of the PRs further and see if it gets to a solution quicker. We also have a thank you for pointing out the proposal or mentioning the new default theme. If you missed that, there is a proposal for a new kind of default theme. What was her name? Channing Ritter. She posted that about 2 weeks ago, and it's more like it's going to be a base theme, but then it's a call for the community to send in style variations as well as style variations for that theme that then totally can change how a site looks, even if it doesn't change the theme. So I think that's it's an excellent new approach, using all the different tools that are available, especially the style variations. I find it very, and Rich Tabo also he's not on the team for the default team, but he's definitely raised his hand to say, well, I will contribute some style variation for the default theme. And please, we will share the post in the show notes, of course, and also so you can share your feedback. That's one thing, but also you can be updated on the next version of this, because the next iteration will be that there will be a basic theme, and then how to submit style variations. That hasn't been yet finalized, how the process going to work. It's always with the new things, right? You need to find the right process to make it work. But Jenning Ritter and the design team and the theme team are working closely together to make this a great new default theme experience.
Yeah, I also have one more news to share. So because the date for the WordPress 6.1 is so far ahead, we are also preparing a bug fix release for WordPress major version, which is going to be 6.0.2. And like we still didn't like decide on the exact dates, but we are shooting at the end of month, and you should expect like some official announcements soon, like probably after the call chat that happens every Wednesday.
Yeah, that is good. That's good. There are a few bug fixes that came out, and yeah, having them fixed sooner rather than later is really good. Thanks for pointing that out, Grzegorz. We also have a link to the design explorations that James Costa did, and he published it on the design team post, and that is a new way to offer editor configuration to new people who encounter the block editor for the first time, to select on the placement of their toolbar, and has some little gifs in there that actually shows the user what does it mean. One is the toolbar, the other one, and then the document toolbar being on top, and then the block toolbar, as well as the accessibility, like do you want to see only the icons, or also the text for the buttons in the toolbar, and similar things. So it's very interesting. It makes the modal, the greeting modal, a little larger, but it actually conveys so much more information, and it's so much more helpful, I find, than the current user experience. So take a look at it. Right now, these are explorations. There's nothing decided on yet, but that's the right moment to offer your opinions and offer suggestions and ideas, and be part of the process. So we will share that link in the show notes, of course, and it's called Design Exploration, Encourage Editor Configuration During Onboarding. So Bandwire just merged a prototype to merge block CSS with the theme JSON styles. And that definitely is something that theme developers should take a look at to see if that works with how they want to approach it or with their themes. It's in combination with a new post that says moving core block styling to JSON. And that's certainly something that is ahead of 6.1 to figure out, to make the process of, to give more customization options through the global styles UI, and that themes can override block JSON styles as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how that is received by the design and theme developers, as well as the plugin developers. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so like we are entering in a very interesting situation, because like, well, so far team could have opinions about styles, like default styles for blocks. And that's like something that can scale well. But sometimes like because we have like this interface that unifies how you deal with so many aspects of how blocks looks like. So you can change spacing, padding, fonts, all the types, everything related to typography. You can change background color, foreground color, links, and so many things that like we constantly see new things arriving. And like that's like in the past you would like customize that for the individual blocks using CSS, but now the same styles can be replaced by the same construct that exists for themes in the theme JSON file. So like the idea is how to leverage that also on the block level, and it brings like a lot of power because like you can use one language to change everything, but then it creates a lot of questions like what comes first, which one should be applied on top of another one. And like there's also a similar exploration for plugins. So like there's like plugins that change a lot of things, like for instance WooCommerce comes and they can have opinions about styles for blogs as well. So like they are also trying to find a way using the same like representation in the JSON file, so you could like combine them together. And it's like it's definitely very powerful. Like the benefit of using this common language to express styles is that you can use all type of tools that we see popping up in the community. Like there's a few tools that allow you to generate those theme JSON files. So that could be extended for in the future for block JSON and for maybe, I don't know what's going to be for plugins, maybe a theme JSON, but maybe plugin.json. Time will tell. But it's like it's about having programmatic control over all those things and having a like coherent way to change the same aspects of the front, like on the front end, how everything looks like. And some people like describe that this is how the design system got introduced to WordPress, which is like a good change from the design perspective. But it's like it's a very complex to come up with a good approach. So that's why we have this proposal, the call for feedback, so people can share their ideas and their concerns, how that might evolve, how that might impact their projects and products and so on.
Excellent. Yeah, it's going to be some interesting times, especially as you said, kind of the roadmap for at the beginning for UI and for the no-code users is pretty much well spelled out, and there's a vision. But now that it's almost done with the underlying architecture, there are now the things that need to be happening for extenders, right? For plugin developers, theme developers. And because everything is now at least understood how it's in place, there are still a few things like the style engine and the common language of how blocks are styled that are coming together. And these are exciting times. I love it. For the community, so Josepha Hayden Chomphosy, executive director of the WordPress open source project, has posted a posted with a headline, "Giving FSE a more user-friendly name." And the TLDR for it is that the terms full site editing or full site editor, also abbreviated FSE, were actually just a code name internally, and they were developed to easily refer to all the collection of features under that are for site editing and global styles and that, and are integrated in the WordPress experience. But how can we best update the wording to be more user-friendly, because it doesn't tell the user anything? And naming is really hard. We see that all the time. There are a few issues that she has with it, or sees with it, that it's already possible to edit every part of WordPress using code. So the term full site editing doesn't differentiate between the phases of the project, and does not show the new capabilities of the CMS per se. And it also implies the use of blocks, but for new users, there's no reason for them to expect anything else. So the term isn't descriptive enough for a user that comes to WordPress. What does it do? And then she goes in a little bit more detail and asks then a few questions for you. We've referred to it this way for a long time, is one of the reasons. How can we tackle renaming it together? And then it's in the code base. So how will we make sure people who aren't regular contributors see that there will be a change? And repeating in inline, what other contexts do you think we need to be aware of, to look at when we refer to the collective work in the future? So this is one of the more discussed posts, but your opinion is definitely worth bringing in. There are 88 replies already, but it's I don't think that a lot of people have seen that yet. So if you haven't read it yet and haven't thought about it, it's definitely worth your attention, unless you say, okay, well, I don't know how they call it, I don't care. So, but yeah, most of the time, if you are an educator, if you're a theme developer, you have to talk to your users and just explain what it is. That's what we call full site editing now. And there might be a better way, and there should be a better way, I think. So that's one of the pieces I have for you. And the other one, so there was a call for testing out from the FSE program, the 15th in a row. And Anne had a deadline of August 1st for comments. I think it ran for 4 weeks. And she now published the summary post for it. And yeah, it was amazing. There were 2 translations again for the Japanese community as well as for the Italian community. So there were other voices heard. Well, speaking of translation, yeah, full site editing doesn't translate well into a lot of languages. So there was also a concern. And then she also used for the first time for a test release a feature or a service called InstaWP, which lets her set up a site and give you a link to it, so you can spin up your own test website without having to do a local install or any of that. So you could use it for 7 days to go through the test. That was really interesting. So the high-level summary is there's still a lot of confusion about certain things, especially it was heavy on the query loop, but it was also, when you create a new template, you get an empty view. Is there a way to make it replicate some of the footers and headers that is on other templates also for a new one, so they know, okay, this is what I have on every website, and something like that. And yeah.
So to clarify, what was the task exactly? I read that you were asked to go to the editor, like full site editor, just to make a pun of the name, and then go to the toolbar and probably create a new template and pick a category, like version of the template, and then like go and use query loop to display all the posts from that category and provide everything else that you want to see on this type of pages, right?
Right. And that was one task. And the other task was to create new posts to explore patterns that were already available on the site. That's why the InstaWP was important. That a pattern for a new event announcement and a pattern for an event recap, meaning there were also additional information that were supposed to be in there in the pattern and how it worked.
Yeah, but still, this is very exciting that you can go and create a template using your browser without having any access to the server. It's just like it's a so huge change for site owners.
Yes, and up until those changes were in the block editor, it was always more like a catch up for what has been around in page builders for maybe a decade or something like, well, not 6 or 7 years apart. That was not in core. But now with this new template editor, this is something that you couldn't do before without code. Yeah, that you have an author template, and in 13.7 there were a whole range of new templates available now. And in this version, we have yet another one. And that is probably the conclusion of the how many different template types can we create. Yeah, I'm really excited about that. That's a total new thing for site owners that don't, don't need any developer to not only have a new template, but also can create the pattern creation. That is still the missing link. But you can do a combination of having for every new user on your site that edits, you could, as a developer, you can actually have patterns for a certain block type or post type show up in the create new method. So that is also something that is highly underused right now. I think those things all come together with time, and we need to really have more educational post around that. Like the call for testing, that's the best way to learn what the new features are when you follow those calls for testing, because they're very detailed and very distinct, and make sure that you can accomplish that, but you learn so much. All right. Yeah, that brings us to what's released.
I mean, finally, like there's a lot of cover that's happening in the community. That's great.
Yeah. So Gutenberg 13.8 was released. George Mamadashvili was a release lead, and he noted that we are almost 3 releases away from 6.1. Yeah, I did some calculations, and it seems that 14.1 will be the last plugin release that will make it into 6.1. And that is supposed to come out in September 17, something like that. Yeah, so 13.8 comes with fluid typography, accessibility improvements, revamped quote block, template parts, UX enhancements, and it's also, of course, always full of bug fixes and code quality improvements. So let's take it from the top.
Yeah, so the fluid typography is a huge change. It's something that probably a lot of designers expected to see. And, like it's something that still isn't exposed in the UI. So we need to wait for that. It's a pretty common approach that we've seen in the past. And we talked about other features that are first available through code, and then the UI comes after it's properly tested. So maybe Birgit, you will tell more about what's exciting about this feature.
Well, the fluid typography, what that does is that you can, as a theme developer, set a minimum size of your font sizes for the smaller screen and the maximum size for the big screens. And then what the theme does is, or WordPress does, is kind of scales from the small to the screen seamlessly the typography. So the size of the letters, the spacing of the letters, and also how the paragraphs kind of form. So there is no set viewpoint or viewport for the mobile version or the tablet version. It is seamless, and that is kind of the approach that the Gutenberg developers have taken to more implement intrinsic design rather than the certain viewpoints that are along the way, which other page builders have. It's now available in theme JSON and the for theme JSON. So you need to can set it in the theme JSON file, and then how to implement that is in the PR. That's 39529. And I know there is a certain a post in the works to flesh that out a bit for the theme developers, and it's coming out in the next week or two. But in the PR, which we will separately share in the show notes, you are able to set the settings .typography .font sizes and then give it presets for your theme. You set the fluid field to true, and then you have the minimum size and the maximum size, or you can name them. And your theme then is able to, and WordPress will create the variables for it for the units. It seems that the best use would be to use the rem units for the relative size propagation. Right now, the maximum viewport is 1600 pixel, and yeah, I don't know if that's right, but it says here 768 for the smaller size, so it will not go all the way down to the mobile. But that is this is the first version, so it's not going to be perfect, and it's really going to be rough. So the developers really need you to test it out and give some feedback on it, how your implementation is either stifled, or what are the blockers, what does work, what does not work, how you would kind of proceed with that. Because as Jagger said, the first version is just to get it out in front of the people to be testing, and then iterate on the implementation with the feedback from the community. Yeah,
Yeah,
so this
although
is
I must say that all the demos I've seen so far looks pretty great. So maybe it isn't like so rough as you mentioned. Maybe it's like good enough for some teams to enable that and see how it plays in practice.
Yeah, I certainly have a it's good enough kind of approach to many things, but I know that separates me from the professional theme developers and designers. They want it to be pixel perfect, and they want it to be very granular, have flexibility, a very granular form. So I think myself would not be a good judge of the feature, because I also don't make a living selling themes. So I really would love to see what Anna Segoda, for instance, does with it, or what Ellen Bauer, who is also has been a theme developer since the beginning of Blocks and FSE, and they have already published quite a few, like Rich Tabor, quite a few themes in the theme directory, or also on the WooCommerce marketplace. So that is definitely something they will test it out and figure out what needs to be done. So other enhancements that we have in the 13.8 release is that the social icon block has a variation now, or an icon for the WhatsApp app. Has a WhatsApp icon, so you can also connect your profile, your WhatsApp profile on your website. What I also am quite excited about is actually talking about theme JSON. There are quite a few things in this release that are concerning the theme JSON file. This one is also support for heading and caption elements in the theme JSON schema, meaning that you can target with your CSS directly the HTML elements without having to create another class name or something with your styling. It's one is also a little minor. That's the merge of comments and post comments blocks. That's a big deal, but it's also kind of the merging of the old thing with the new thing. So when you use the old comments block and now use the new post comments block, it will update your comments.
Yeah, it's mostly for the themes that use the old block. So right now, if you use that, it will migrate to the new one, but it will still retain the old behavior, and you will be able to switch to the version with blocks, which like with inner blocks, which is like more powerful in terms of all the types of customization that users can do inside the editor in WordPress. Whereas the old one, it depends on templates that is PHP based, and like by default it uses what every WordPress instance provides that can be overridden by themes, but every site could also provide their own But it's you need to code that. So that the new version is what we would prefer, because like with the block concept you can do more.
Yeah. So another great feature is now added to the image block, and that is border support for color, width, and style. And I think that's the last piece missing to make it really flexible what you do with themes. And George wrote that he's very curious to see what the creative folks at the Museum for Block Art can accomplish with that, because now you can actually change the border width and differently from the right and left, on top and bottom, and then change the color of each. And it's very flexible. And you also can change the radius of the border. So you have rounded corner on two sides and square corners on the other side. And it's just really amazing what you can do with it when you have border controls. So yeah, definitely check it out and see what you want to do with it. The Block Museum for Block Art is definitely open for submissions, and I will share in the show notes how you can submit your creations and see what you can come up with.
Yeah, there were also a couple of changes to template parts, which makes them even more powerful. The one thing that I like a lot is that right now it was quite difficult to explore existing template parts in the inserter because they were hidden. You had to insert the template part, and once the block was in the editor canvas, you had two options. One was select existing template part, the other one you could create it from the scratch. So right now all the existing template parts are also exposed in the inserter, which is like a shortcut for everyone. It's easier to find them, which is a good change. It also aligns more with how reusable blocks work, which have they are in their own tab in the inserter. Here, like those template parts, as far as I remember, there are inside blocks, which is like might be a little bit confusing. So maybe that's something that could be iterated further. However, if you search, you don't care so much, and you will be able to see them. So I find it like a great step in the right direction.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's interesting how people explore interfaces completely differently. So having multiple ways to do the same thing really exposes more users to the intuition on how to change things, and streamlining the process like these kind of shortcuts is definitely a way to go. Yay. There is a minor change to the color palette. It now displays a checkered preview background when the value is transparent. So you couldn't see from the color settings if there is a transparent color or transparent background on a group block or on a cover block. Now you can see it through the checkered preview. That's definitely a quality of life kind of change that your brain really can absorb that and see that there and give you the signal there's a transparent value there. You can now also, and that was missing for a while, you could do the layout content size settings through the theme JSON, but the user didn't have any way to correct that or change that. Now a site owner has. You can now do it through the interface, that you can set the the content width as well as the wide width, and also the padding for those blocks. So that is really for the layout of the template. So that
There's
has been
one change
changed.
that I'm pretty excited about. It's about the placement of the inline toolbar when using rich text tools like bold, italic, underline. So like at the moment, like in the past, like in most cases, you would see that in the block toolbar that could be either docked to the header or on the top of your block, which like especially when you write like a longer paragraph, it's far away when you want to use mouse to like interact with that. So now you can change the setting, and that will be like a floating toolbar that's always next to the text that you have highlighted, which is like very similar to what you will see on mobile devices or tablets when you interacting with the apps that come with like with the system like iOS or Android. So like I like that one, and like I'm hoping that people will find it useful as well.
Yeah, I really like that. I saw that first in Medium when they came out, that they had this you highlight the text and then they offered you a formatting toolbar, and I really love that. And I was missing that in Gutenberg for forever, obviously. But I also tested the distraction-free writing tool that Rich Tabor and Jeffrey Carendang created. That was the Iceberg editor, and they actually implemented that as well. And I'm glad that it now came to core and that we have the first iteration on that. And I'm eager to test it out and use it.
Yeah, also from the experience, I know it's a bit tricky to use that feature, especially when you are using mobile devices, because the system provides their own toolbar. So if like in that context, might be, very disruptive because you don't know whether that toolbar will come from the system or from the block editor. So not all features might be available if you see the system one. So it's something that needs to still to be tested, but because it's a setting, you can like for the mobile you can disable that, and for the browsers you can have it enabled. So I'm sure that we will see some improvements on that front.
Excellent. Yes. And a whole new, so the quote has received a total revamp, so to speak, the quote block. Now you can use it, and it's coming out of experimentation with this 13.8 version. So it gets quite a few more testing in before it actually will come to 6.1. Now you can use nested blocks with your quote block. So you could have a quote from someone and add an image to it, or have multiple paragraphs in there, or have a list in a quote block. Yeah, often you couldn't do a list and make it a quote. So now you can, and I'm really happy that it made it into this version. So
Yeah, it's very powerful, especially for developers who like use GitHub and they know what you can do using Markdown, that you like often quote something which includes code examples, images, videos, and so on. So like this like bringing the same functionality into the block world. So I'm really excited about that one.
yeah,
And like
yeah, especially when you have code quotes, yeah, in tutorials or so. Yeah, it definitely
yes.
helps to have that. Also, have the
Yeah.
citation with it. Yeah.
And also there's ongoing work to bring the same set of features for the list block, which is like another level of complexity. So now you would be able to have a quote that have a list that have like inside that nested blocks, like you can have like paragraphs, headings, and like code examples, like even in list, which like, you can,
Icons. Yeah.
yeah, that
Yeah.
that's going to be
Emojis. Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Emojis in a list block. Yes. Nice.
Lists are much more complex because lists are not like two-dimensional. It's not only like the nested blocks can be on one level, but you can have the list itself can have nested lists. So it's like the interactions between those internal like nested blocks are much more complex.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if that's going to be ready for 6.1, but it's definitely in works and might happen.
And if you're very interested in that, list block version 2 is still in experiments. So you need to enable it through the experiment settings before you can test it out in your local or test site. I wouldn't do it in production, but yeah, for testing, it's definitely, you need to enable it in the experiment settings. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that, especially because you're not, so when you change from a bullet list to an ordered list, you change the whole markup in it. Yeah. So what happens then? Yeah, there are quite some complexities there. We have seen that in discussions also with the table of contents block. Yeah, that comes out of the gate with a numbered list, but many people don't like the numbered list, and there is no way to change it over to a bulleted list. So maybe the experiences that come with the list development with the list block version 2 can actually be replicated for other great blocks that are out there. Yeah, so what else is in there? Is there anything that stood out for you? There were
Yeah, I think we covered the most important aspects, like enhancements and new features. Like that's quite a huge list. There were some accessibility improvements as usual. It's always great to see contributors focus on that area, which is like never good enough because like the interactions in the editor are so complex that it's very hard to do it right on first run.
Yeah. Yeah, there have been changes to the border controls, which are trigger quite some creativity. So getting that right for accessibility with labeling and tooltips and field sets and legends, that is now available in the plugin. And then there were some fixes for descriptions or for some other labeling and semantics in the paragraph block. And then also they also replaced some div elements, clickable div elements, with actually buttons, because that's a better experience for all users.
There's also like in that related to that, there's very interesting change now. When you are focused on the group block, you can use enter key to create a new empty paragraph just after the group block. So before you would just like it wouldn't like nothing would happen. So you would have to like use maybe the drop down menu from the toolbar for the block to find insert a block after the group, or maybe like find some other way, like in between line inserter with mouse. Now it's like, much more convenient just to press enter.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I always appreciated that with, for instance, the list block. Yeah, you can enter, and then you're out of the list block and can start. But getting that to more than one blocks is really good. There are also some big change, not big, but yeah, good changes in the documentation of things, especially having much more examples in the core blocks data API on how you use it, and some of the examples are also with great comments, so you can make more sense out of things. I think that Ryan Welcher does the great work there, and he definitely can use some help. He is determined to have, for every function call or store call or something like that, he has an example that is ready to copy paste into some other code, or at least with adaptions. The docs for the block JSON are also updated because it was missing the block variations, and that has been added to the JSON schema definition. So now you can point to the block variations as well as to the styles with your block metadata. And then the data module had some missing references, and that have been updated, so you can actually find them in the documentation now. And again, theme JSON got some clarifications on the null, true, and false values for the block gap setting that was a little confusing before. So it's now straightened out, as I would say.
Yeah, it's ongoing effort to improve developer documentation. There's a lot of public APIs that are documented, but they miss examples. And I think that the work that Ryan Welcher is shepherding is so important to get it, because like having code examples makes it so much easier to actually use the code.
Right. Yeah. Totally agree with that. Yeah. So I think we are at the end of the changelog for the 13.8 plugin release that happened this week on August 3rd. And now we come to the section, what's in active development and what's discussed. And before we head into the Block API issues, I think there was one thing that I wanted to point out, and that is that Ramon published an update also on the style engine tracking issue. So we will definitely point to that in the show notes. But he has, so the style engine is an experimentation, right, or is in experimentation right now. So, but it has a phase 1, which is block supports and building the foundation. And then the phase 2 is the global styles consolidation and reducing style tags. And in both, he has some updates on some of the issues. So make sure if you're a theme developer, you're definitely interested in what's coming down with the style engine development. All right.
Yeah, it's very related to what we are going to cover now, which is Block API. So style engine is, in fact, subset of that. It's related to how class names and style attributes are added to the block HTML output. And the idea with style engine is that eventually we would have everything generated on the server only on the front end. So that means that only styles and class names would be included on the page when the given block is there, which means like an excellent reduction of unused CSS, which a lot of websites struggle with today. So like, and the progress on that is really promising. And like, I hope that like in a few months, we will see all the benefits of the work happening on that front.
All right. So you revamped some of the, you created a tracking issue for the Block API that had quite a few chapters on it. And it does seem to only have 35 tasks, and there are other tracking issues with much longer. But it covers issues that are around block assets, block registration, block attributes, variations, block supports, and then the inserting and moving blocks and block editing, dynamic block manipulation, server-side rendering component, and of course, documentation. So what stands out for you on this? Yeah, what is the big effort here?
So like, first of all, like we have over 4,000 issues open in the Gutenberg repository. It's very hard to like triage all of them, like go back and like see what's there. So the effort that I made together with Matthias just was like, can we identify the most common like recurring issues that people raise and they want to see improved, and that we wanted to like collect items that make the biggest impact like in the short term. And it's like, it's not the list is closed. We will be constantly revisiting whether the list makes sense. We will be adding new features based on the feedback from people in general. It's just a way for us to bring better focus on what we can work on in the upcoming WordPress releases and Gutenberg releases. And like it's divided into sections, just like it tries to follow how the milestones for how the WordPress, like the block editors and the full editing should evolve. Like it's always like milestone for template parts, milestone for global styles, and so on. Like it tries to mirror the same structure. And like for now, it's like, it collects issues that we've been talking about, some of them for years now, and there were never clear focus to work on them. And we are trying to change that because we see that stuff like block validation and block deprecation comes back like every now and then, like these people often complain about. So we just want to make sure that there is single place that people can go and see, okay, is that on the roadmap? Is that being tracked? How I can get involved there and help move that forward. So like, instead of saying that find the issue on GitHub throughout all those 4,000 issues, like there's a single place. It's pinned when you go to the Gutenberg repository and you go to issues, like on the top of the page, there are 3 pinned issues. It's one of them now. So it's easy to find for people if they know about that thing. And so it's easier to discover. And like this is also a good way to see what's actually being worked on, because if you go to this issue and the tracking number is 41236, like you can see, because there is a like icon, is a wrench, or how you call it, like the like
A
it's like
toolbar,
toolbar, yeah,
tool
toolbox,
set, yeah.
tool set, yeah. So you can see this icon. It means that like someone is actually working on this feature, or like there is open PR, so you can leave your feedback there. And like once we have some issues done, then we just be marked as finished, so people can see at some point a history of the progress, what's being worked there. It's also a nice way if someone opens a new issue, and like Fabian Kegi, he opened recently some issues related to how we could better control inserting blocks in the editor. So like you could define, for instance, this block goes only when there is like no block inside the template, or maybe I want to have only a single instance of this block when it's inside a given parent block, like like very complex use cases. And those type of issues, there are like they're great ideas, but it's not so easy to define how that could be done. So like this tracking issue will try to like combine similar issues like that and put that into the tracking issues, so you can have a single reference and find those issues. Also, like from the perspective of project management, like when someone opens a new issue, and we can easily like say, okay, please check this tracking issue and see what we already have on this topic and see how that fits to the proposed solution so far. Like like this type of capabilities are open. And yeah, I mean, like I'm really excited about that, because like so far it was really hard to identify how people can get involved, improve the APIs of blogs, so it impacts how you develop blogs, and like to make it easier, more straightforward for all the developers. But also it impacts the core blogs, so like like everyone would benefit from the ideas that are stored in this issue.
Yeah, so let's see at some of the examples. And so in the assets, there is one task is to explore how to tree shake block styles on the front end, and has an example issue. And that is what does it mean? That's kind of how the CSS cascades through the front end. Another one is combine.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so like the idea here is like, for instance, the idea was whether we can find a way to define, okay, this style is present on the page when the following conditions happen. For instance, if the blog has a special class name called, whatever, and then like the system that would be built behind that could like say, okay, and this blog doesn't have this class, that means that we can skip that and we don't have to serve it to the user. So like like it's fairly technical, but that gives you idea what exciting things we can do with blogs, having a better understanding of how they are structured, what they contain, and like these ideas. Also, there's a lot of requests from plugin authors, so they would like to have a better ways to inject their own styles to blogs or JavaScript. So like we are discussing different ways to make it easier. So you could just define, okay, to all blogs that met certain criteria, let's add this style that brings some additional, visual effects.
Yeah. Okay, I understand that. Yeah.
One of the things that we are actively working on is related to dynamic block manipulation. So we always wanted to have a way to, let's say, use some data that comes from database or some external service. So, for instance, the ideas are like the simplest one. You have a block inside the footer that shows copyright note. Like in PHP, it's easy because you are using date function and just like changes every year, so you don't have to go to your website and update that. And how to define some ways, so you could just like insert a token that says, okay, this is a date, and like it displays a year, and like it will change automatically inside the block. So it's like it's stored in the database like something dynamic. It like on the render of the front end it changes. So like this is very like advanced concept. However, we are now we should see next week a proposal on make core block for something more simple. So like often people want to replace some like text or token or like something like that predictor, like a pattern inside your block. For instance, the cover block has a featured image, and like it's really powerful. And we'll be seeing a proposal for a special API that will make that simpler. So you can define like, let's find this tag and change this attribute source with the value that comes from the featured image, and like, this type of thing. So everything is very technical, and I think that is like a good common like good place for people who are very familiar with JavaScript, but also with PHP. So like everyone will find something for like to think about. And like
especially the inline token. We actually had Dennis Snell as a guest on our podcast here when he was working and trying to think through that, and he took us quite deeply into what needs to happen. And so make it complex, make it easy, make it simple. And we called it back then, we called it kind of the short codes 2.0. So it's not nothing new to WordPress, but it's the innovated version, the better blocks version for it, to have these inline tokens for replacing some variable with something else, or with some values. And I'm glad that you said that's kind of in the works for next week to try out, or to at least kick it around in theory. So that's wonderful. There's also something that's in the works
and for block registration, there is like a very quite simple proposal. Like right now, to define how the dynamic block gets rendered with PHP, you need to like define a function. Inside this function, you will get some like content of the block, attributes, and the block type. And you use all that variables to generate the output that's going to be displayed on the front end. And we are also thinking ahead and trying to combine efforts with how in the future you could like write simpler blocks in that you would provide a PHP template that generates that output instead. So you don't have to deal with functions, you just provide a function that just prints everything. And this proposal covers that. And
that sounds really
in the future, so in the future we could have something similar for JavaScript. So also you could provide, like, depends what we pick and land on. But there is like this in the WordPress organization on GitHub, there is Block high duration experiments repository and like explores exactly what I said for JavaScript, how to make blocks interactive on the front end. So for instance, they can have buttons that change state of the block, and you can have like dynamic data that updates, like for instance, like the simple example people always use, the counter, like you click the plus sign and the number changes. So this type of features. And at some point, we hope that this PHP template and JavaScript template could be somehow unified. So maybe not like in a sense that you would be writing a single code, but with some tooling, maybe we could have like some format that allows you to generate PHP and JavaScript, so you don't have to bother and write it twice.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That was a big discussion between Helen Husandi and Mark Jakeworth and Riyad Benguela about, I think it was in October last year. And then I know Michael Cipolinski, yeah, has done some more exploration. And then there was, did you work with Elaine Schlesser on there's a new JavaScript? Bento, yeah, Bento JavaScript. Yeah, kind of replace the JavaScript framework with a different framework. It's not certainly the best approach, but if it works for people who use that before, yeah, that you can use it for blocks with different languages, or languages and variations on frameworks. Yeah.
In some ways, the Bento components that Google is working on is similar to the ideas, because it just like it exactly does that. So they have some way to define components, and they have different representation for web components, for Preact, like, and you can just like it's the same UI, but like you can use different code depending whatever you want to have on your website. And like it's sort of like falls in the same category,
right?
But it's just like Bento is done by Google, and it's hard to tell how it evolved. So we are exploring different paths for now.
Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah. Well, so is there anything else do you want to point out from this tracking issue or discussion?
Yeah, I guess I'm good. Like one of the ideas that Fabian mentioned are very interesting. So because the way to control where you display blocks is always been troublesome for people. So like people want to have flexibility. For instance, you have custom post type. You don't want to see all blocks. So how to do that, right? And we have some ways, like on the server you can provide allowed blocks, which is list of names of blocks that are allowed. But sometimes people want to have like the opposite approach. How do I say that which blocks I don't want and I want the rest, right? So that's also some of the discussions happening that the people our listeners could chime in and share their ideas. And in general, like we with WordPress 6.0, we added ancestor field, which allows you to define, okay, I want to have this block when one of the like parent or like grandparent or grandparent blocks are this and that block. And it's like gives more flexibility. Like the comments block uses that because it allows you like have comments, and you can have group, then you can have, I don't know what else do you want, like you can have several groups, and then you use like a comment title, for instance, right? I mean, it's more complex, but like to like make it shorter. And like this gives a lot of flexibility. And one of the ideas I had recently, how you say like, I want to have this parent and this ancestor, but I don't want to have this ancestor, like this type of way of defining, which would like satisfy a lot of use cases.
Yeah, indeed. So, yeah. And I think we need to really write much more use cases for it, so and tutorials, so people can actually imagine things. Yeah, because theoretically, what's an ancestor, what's a parent, what's a child, where's the child? Yeah, kind of it's all a little bit more a little bit too abstract when you kind of try to figure out how to to get it all together. There are so many ways to skin the cat. So is there also, so I have a question for you. And one is that, is there a way to actually pick up custom fields for custom post types if they were kind of already created, or if they are kind of available to use them also in a template? Or yeah, it's probably very hard to do it via UI. That's why advanced custom fields is still for many developers the go-to place instead of creating custom blocks for the custom fields. But I think that are there any thoughts on that in this reiteration of the Block API?
Yeah, so for now, like the proposal that's going to be shared next week for replacing parts of HTML with API that allows you to change attributes. That could be a way, like you could like say that, okay, this field is like going to be replaced with custom fields. So you give it a name and something like that. But, you know, it's still not good enough, in my opinion. Like we need to have a proper UI for that in the future, and maybe even like more advanced way of defining dynamic inline tokens. Like the way it works with Block's ACF plugin is that they just, you know, they allow linking between an attribute, so it stores the reference to the exact field in the database, so it stores the number, and based on that it can, like, you know, provide the correct value, so whenever it changes it updates on the server as well. So it's not that easy to do that, but
Right.
like for that ACF has created a special way of writing templates which takes that into account, is dynamic, it's able to like link all the correct numbers and so on. So I mean, it's like having something like that in a more flexible way that works not only with what ACF provides, it's a bigger task, and it's definitely something we would like to have. It's just we need to do it in steps.
Yeah, no. So that will be the Block API third iteration. Now it's the second iteration, and then the next iteration is going to maybe kind of thinking about through that part. Well, excellent. Thank you so much for walking us all through that and what's in the works and what the next iteration of extensibility for blocks actually will look like. That is definitely, now that the foundation is in place, yeah, now extensibility has a higher priority, it seems, for the Gutenberg project. So I'm really glad that this took a lot of work to find all the right issues and figure out how to structure that. So thank you for going through that, and also leading us through that.
Although, to be fair, most of the issues were opened by our excellent contributors. It's like, you know, I just only did the part that finding them and putting in one place.
Yeah, and you helped a lot of people kind of get a good roadmap through that, or at least an idea of what the vision is going to be. So, because that's always a question that we get. So, what's the vision? Yeah. And only these tracking issues and overview issues like Matthias did and what you did, and was also Andrew does for layouts and for style engine and all that. Maybe I should share some of the tracking issues. I think I collected about 10 or 15 tracking issues now from the Gutenberg project. It's probably a better way to figure out what's current on what people are working on. So yeah, that's a call for me to maybe think about some curation of that. All right. Well, thank you very much. We are at the end of the show. We are way over whatever we wanted to do as an hour limit or so. But that's okay, because you brought so much more insights into what the second iteration of Block API is going to hold. Is there anything else that you want to leave our listeners with? Nope.
I don't have anything. It's
You
like,
don't have
you know,
anything.
it's
Yeah,
like
I don't have anything
I'm
either.
really
I said everything that I wanted to say at the beginning in the announcement and the community. And no, I'm glad you were on the show. thank you so much for coming. As always, dear listeners, the show notes will be published on gutenbergtimes.com/podcast. This is episode 71. And if you have questions or suggestions, especially also for Grzegorz with all the questions that you might have for the Blocks API, send them to changelog@gutenbergtimes.com. That's changelog@gutenbergtimes.com, or ping me or Grzegorz on Twitter or WordPress Slack. My handle is BPH. That's my initials on both of them. What's yours, Grzegorz?
Mine is GZIOLO.
Giolo. Gisolo.
Yes.
Gisolo. Yeah. Cool. Well, this was it. And thank you very much for listening. If you find this helpful, create a review and we read that out loud here. So you would get a little shout out on the next episode. Thank you for listening. And I wish you a great week and next 2 weeks until we hear you again.
Thank you for invitation, Birgit. It was, as usual, a pleasure to catch up what's happening with Gutenberg.
Well, thank you so much. And it's always a pleasure to have you. Thanks so much, Grzegorz.